I rise today to discuss an important matter before the United States Senate, the reauthorization of our nation's Federal Aviation Administration. The FAA is tasked with a critical mission to manage the safety and the security of our nation's airspace. Our nation's airspace is an incredible resource that fuels our economy. According to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, in 2015, a record 896 million passengers traversed America's skies. Our aviation system contributes $1.5 trillion to our nation's economy, and it supports 11.8 million jobs for hardworking Americans, as noted by the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. The Senate's FAA reauthorization bill will make our aviation system stronger for families, children, veterans, and the traveling public. It will also benefit Nebraska's rural airports and local aviation stakeholders. Notably, this carefully negotiated bill will strengthen America's aviation system without raising fees or taxes on airline passengers. Our robust bipartisan legislation includes several major priorities that I championed. I'm proud of bipartisan language I worked to include in the bill, along with Senators Booker, Cantwell, and Ayotte. Our provision would compel the FAA to work with the airline industry to comprehensively assess and update guidelines for emergency medical kits on commercial aircraft. These kits, which haven't been statutorily updated since 1998, provide life-saving resources for passengers. It is well past time for the FAA to evaluate medications and equipment included in these kits. Doing so will ensure all passengers, particularly families with young infants facing unknown allergic reactions, have access to the medical supplies they might need in an emergency situation. In addition, I worked with Senator McCaskill to include an amendment that would make it easier for traveling mothers to care for their young infants. Our amendment unanimously passed the Commerce Committee. We worked closely with airport stakeholders, including Omaha's Eppley Airfield, to establish reasonable minimum standards for both medium and large hub airports to develop private rooms for nursing mothers in future capital development plans. Traveling as a new mom can be challenging, and it can be stressful at times, but I believe this important change will provide increased flexibility and also peace of mind for mothers traveling through airports across our country. I also joined Senator Hirono to include an amendment that would ensure disabled veterans working at the FAA have access to service-connected disability leave. The FAA was one of the few agencies not included in the recently passed Wounded Warrior Federal Leave Act. That bill required federal agencies to ensure disabled vets have access to service-connected disability leave. Our disabled veterans bravely served our country, and they deserve access to benefits that they have earned. I'm grateful for the achievements this bill will advance for the flying public. At the same time, the bill is also a victory for Nebraska's rural communities and airports. The Small Airport Regulation Relief Act, which is included in the FAA bill, would create a temporary exemption for small airports so that they can continue to receive Airport Improvement Program funds, those AIP funds, despite downturns in air service. The survival of smaller airports, such as Scottsbluff's Western Nebraska Regional Airport, depends on these crucial funds to provide service to local passengers and businesses. Several of Nebraska's small and community airports, such as Alliance, Chadron, Grand Island, McCook, North Platte, and Scottsbluff, They'll also benefit from a continuation of the Essential Air Service, or EAS, program. The EAS program incentivizes air carriers to provide service to underserved and rural areas, and it's critical to ensuring air service continues for Nebraska's rural communities. Meanwhile, the Central Nebraska Regional Airport in Grand Island is growing, and it hosts a privately operated federal contract tower. I encourage the inclusion of provisions to compel the FAA to complete a pending cost-benefit analysis for federal contract tower airports. This analysis would reflect the cost-share arrangement more accurately between our local airports and the FAA for those contract towers. Through this legislation, we can help to reduce the burden on local airports like Grand Island, Nebraska. One of the major challenges facing aviation manufacturers has been the FAA's inconsistent and often unclear regulatory process. I collaborated with Lincoln, Nebraska's Duncan Aviation, the largest family-owned maintenance, repair, and overhaul organization in the world, to address this challenge. In fact, Chairman Thune toured the facilities at Duncan Aviation with me in Lincoln last fall. Our bill would provide clarity to aviation businesses like Duncan Aviation by compelling the FAA to establish a centralized safety guidance database. Moreover, the bill would require the FAA to establish a regulatory consistency communications board. The board would set standards to ensure the consistent application of regulations and guidance at regional offices throughout our country. Agricultural aviators in Nebraska will also benefit from safety enhancements in this bill. Far too many of our agricultural pilots have died in recent years after collisions with unmarked utility towers. This legislation would ensure that towers are marked to create safer skies for our agriculture pilots. Passing our FAA bill will be a major accomplishment for the United States Senate. I appreciate and commend the hard work of Chairman Thune, Ranking Member Nelson, and their committee staffers on this meaningful FAA reauthorization bill. In the coming days, I look forward to working together to help pass this critical legislation that will benefit the flying public, our national aviation system, and Nebraska's rural airports and aviation stakeholders. Mr. President, I yield the floor.